Hey guys, welcome to Conversations with a Recovering Loan Officer. As always, I'm Michael Neff, and today I'm joined by a local legend and friend, Jeff Bernheisel, who's been in the industry for a long time in many different roles. And I'd like to talk to you about, your history and stuff. And today specifically, what reminded me that I should have you on our show is that you've been diving a bit into the AI side of things. And I know that's a super hot topic. This interview will probably be scanned by the computers, and then we'll be programmed to say something completely different tomorrow. But yeah, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, man. Thank you. It is funny. The name of this, like when I got the invite, it's recovering loan officers, and I was like, I was a loan officer way back in the day, and I was like, is it you recovering or is it me recovering? Like,
Whoever. I mean, we're all recovering.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say we're all recovering.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere in most loan officers' offices. That's at 2 o'clock.
Yeah,
it's a stressful business for sure. And so is the real estate side, and you have a bit of experience on the real estate side. So actually, why don't you talk us through your history?
it's been a long, windy road. Out of college, so I moved up to Portland. We're in Portland right now, and I moved from Southern Oregon up to Portland, and I was going to become a video game designer. And I got into Portland State and started taking these programming classes, and I was like, this is stupid. I hate it. And so I changed majors, went through a bunch of stuff, spent some time there, and right out of college, I worked for a finance company, and I got introduced into the mortgage world, and I eventually became a mortgage broker after a few years. And so that was kind of how I got into the real estate world, was in that. And the big crash, the big market crash, 2007-ish, I got a little greedy. I was doing pretty well with my mortgage business, and I became a wholesale lender. Kind of handed my book of business over to my brother-in-law at the time. He worked with me, and say former brother-in-law now. Handed my book of business over to him. Kind of got going on the wholesale side, and then the market tanked. Literally like the next month was. Like I made $14,000 my first month, and then I made $700, and the company was like, "Yeah, we just changed our commission structure to go with the market," and then all hell broke loose. You know the rest. And so during that time, I was like, "Man, I can't do this anymore. I've got a background from school. I got a marketing degree, a business management degree, computer science kind of stuff." I at the time was on MySpace, and I put a MySpace post out, and I was like, "Hey, I have all of this experience. Been a mortgage broker for a while, trying to get back into marketing. What's out there?" And the lady that closed all my escrows for me, she's like, "Hey, I just switched to a new title company. You should join me." So that got me into the title marketing side of things, title and escrow. And then throughout that, I've kind of weaved back and forth between title and escrow and a brokerage and a consulting company. And it's all been kind of around marketing and technology. That's always been my jam. And then So I worked at a title company for a total of about almost 10 years. And then when COVID hit, I was stuck at home. I couldn't travel and do all the fun shit that I was doing before. And I was just kind of super bored. So I was like, hey, I'm going to get my real estate license again for the second time, reactivate it, and go prove to myself that I know what I'm talking about. Because I've always had this thing on the little guy that sits on your shoulder that's like, you think you're really good at this, but you've never actually done it. It's like, I'm good at Facebook ads. I'm good at breaking down systems and efficiencies and all of this, but who am I, like we were just talking about, who am I to tell you as a realtor, if you go do this, you'll get a bunch of business? Like if I haven't done it myself, maybe I've seen other people do it and I've coached them, and that's the case. That was the case. But I've always had this guy chirping at me like, if you had to go do this, could you? And so I was like, screw it. I'm going to go give it a shot. So August of 2020, I got my real estate license reactivated and hit the ground running. And I did that for about 18 months, and I did pretty well. I proved to myself that I knew what I was talking about, and did a bunch of business. Almost all of my business was off of one single Facebook ad, which was like, it's just the shit that I've been coaching people for the last 10 years, where I'm like, look, I do know what I'm talking about. It's weird. So, but I knew that wasn't what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. I love the technical marketing stuff. I love all of the Facebook ads and the follow-up systems and all of that, but I don't love the ins and outs of the real estate world and being out in the public and having to deal with, so many
people,
so many idiots out in the world today. And so, they're everywhere. So I just kind of knew that wasn't my end game, I guess you would call it. So I got to the point, it was in the middle of last year where, I was kind of putting some feelers out there, and the owner of EXP reached out. I've known him for a while, and he was like, hey, I've got this big project I want you to take a look at with me. And we started talking about it, and I got super excited. And that was when I realized, like, I love that shit. I love the marketing stuff. I love, what I'm doing now. And so I was like, I'm out. I'm done selling real estate. Hung up my license, and now I work for a company called Breakthrough Broker. Anyway, I got back in touch with the guys at Breakthrough Broker. They've never really had a marketing person before. We worked it out. Now I'm running all the marketing and back end stuff for them. And it's fun. It's like I said, it's the stuff that I love to do. It's the stuff that fills my bucket, and it's keeps me busy for sure.
And so Breakthrough Broker, you kind of described it to me pre-call, but you described it as like Canva for real estate agents.
Yeah, so it's a software platform, for lack of better words, that allows realtors to go in and basically get access to all sorts of marketing materials for free. There's paid upgrades and different things, but it is like Canva, except for instead of going in and being like, I need to design a flyer, like I don't really know how to do that, but I'll figure it out kind of thing. And 8 hours later, you're like, oh, I have a kind of a postcard or a flyer or whatever you're doing. We just have pre-designed templates that are specific to realtors, specific to real estate. So you've got your door hangers, postcards, flyers, anything you could think of for an open house, all the social media posts, like that's all pre-done by our designers. You go in and change your colors, upload your photos, your mugshot, and you're off and running. And then we have the print side of things. So like you can get a PDF and print it at home, or you can order 5,000 and have it mailed out, or, whatever you need. So marketing, design, and print is kind of our specialty.
So I only recently was introduced to Canva, but I'll tell you, it took me 45 seconds to realize the value in what they do. I mean, it truly is amazing, because I don't have a graphic design background. I've got good people on my team that help me do that. But when I started doing this podcast, and I have another podcast, it's more of a personal passion play, specifically that one, because this one, fortunately, I'm able to hand off to my team and they go to town with it. Mm-hmm. The other one, I'm like, how am I supposed to build a thumbnail for this YouTube video? How am I supposed to, put it on Facebook to market this thing? And it was so easy just to like look at templates, grab the graphic text, overlay it, just tell it where it was like done.
Yep.
And so I totally understand the value in what Breakthrough Broker is doing. So for those loan officers who are on the call, if you've got real estate agents who are in the market, out there trying to market themselves online, but their graphic design sucks, you got to check out a system like Breakthrough Broker, or that's going to be the best option, because Canva's not designed for real estate agents. So
people get lost there. They log in, and they're like, oh my God, there's 5,000 choices and I don't know. And like I said earlier, 8 hours later, I'm like, oh, I finally have something that I think looks good, and I could have been doing a million other things. So it's nice to just log in and go, and actually just this week, we totally revamped the search functionality on our site. So we've got everything organized by intentions. So that was even a challenge for us. Like we've got, 2,000 different templates. You just need an open house flyer or something related to an open house. How do I go find that? You can go and search for open house and it'll give you all of these things, but we've got it broken down by intentions now. So if you're running an open house, you can click the open house button and it'll auto-populate everything on our website, from flyers to door hangers to social media posts related to an open house. Nice. Or listing or sphere marketing or social media, like all of these different things. And so we try to just make it super, super easy, because
that's what it needs to be.
We're realtors. Hey, we're not graphic designers, and I don't need to spend hours trying to find something and figure out how to use it and design and colors and all of those things. So yeah, it's like the easy button for graphic design for real estate.
I love that. It's awesome. Sweet. So that's exciting news that, you found a place that's kind of like, so, kind of modern and helping realtors with a thing that takes up a ton of so it's either one of two things. It's either taking up a ton of their time and they're bad at it, or they're simply not doing it because they don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And so it's a good solution.
I get frustrated. I mean, we've all done it with various things in our lives. It's like, I can do that. And then you get frustrated and you're like, You don't want to admit that you can't. And then you get to the point where it's like, it's either too crappy or I mean, some people are just like, yeah, screw it. It's crappy, but whatever. It's better than nothing. Like that sucks too. Right. So, and it also sucks for the brokerage, the owner of the brokerage. If they're like, I went through that at one of the brokerages here at town back in 2010, at M Realty when we were building that out. Like we had our brand locked in, right? It was the orange and all of the modern looking stuff, and then we had agents that were just out making their own shit.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we've spent a lot of money on the brand, and like you got to play by our rules a little bit, and so it gives the owners of the companies ability to lock things down in that sense and kind of protect their brand image and all that.
That is really important because from a marketing perspective, building brand awareness is super important.
Yeah.
And I mean, for several reasons, but I mean, maybe you can walk us through those, but in my mind, it's important because it eliminates barriers to a sale. If the brand is recognized, you don't have to validate that the company you're working with is good because they've seen it out there. They know it's out there. And so, yeah, that's a good point you made.
Yeah, and I think I don't know if it's still the case, but I know at one time, and I would guess it's probably, if it isn't, it's got to be top 3, top 5. But the Remax balloon is the most recognized real estate brand in the world, actually, and they are hardcore protective about even like if I forget how I even came across this, but somebody got a little nastygram, like they got a cease and desist letter because they had real estate signs. There wasn't even a fucking balloon on the thing. It had a red, white, and blue stripe, but it was in a certain order in a certain order and a certain layout where somebody at Remax got a hold of it and sent it to their attorneys, and the attorneys got back and said, hey, yeah, this is way too close to looking like the panels off of a Remax balloon, even though it was just a striped, sign or whatever. And that was kind of when I first started paying attention to that. And this, I mean, to ship that had to be like 2005-ish maybe. But I was like, wow, that's interesting. Why is that the case? Well, they're protecting their brand. Like there's a reason why they are the most recognized brand in the world, because they don't let people go do shit like that. And not even their own, I mean, their own agents for sure, but even other agents, like they don't want people even getting close.
So brand is super important then today for even like normal loan officers or any business owner, right? So how do you build a brand, and like what sorts of marketing activities would you do to kind of like get engagement and drive awareness?
I mean, that's a whole topic,
that is,
podcast in itself, but I can speak, from experience. I've done it several times in my life where, and you've seen me in real time do this, like I want to be known as the whiskey guy. And, I had this plan down the road. I want to open a private whiskey club, right? So how do I build this persona? How do I build this brand and this persona where I'm known as somebody who is well-versed in whiskey, that is the type of guy that would go do something like this, that would build a community around that I could then tap into the community to get the business going, right? And so there's a massive amount of strategy around something like that. And we try to simplify it when we talk about doing it for realtors and loan officers, but it's kind of all the same, no matter what business you're in. And I started in the very beginning. I just start talking about it on Facebook or in real life. I'm at a restaurant, I order whiskey, obviously, stuff like that. Like eventually, if you talk about something long enough, like you get known as that guy. So I became known as a guy who enjoys whiskey. I started a little teeny podcast, a little teeny website. I eventually had this massive website that still is the biggest whiskey review website in the world. I cashed out of that eventually, opened up the whiskey club, built the brand, the logo, all of the design aesthetics around the look and feel that I wanted. So, I mean, it was this massive process. But in direct answering your question, like I just started talking about it publicly, and I knew what I was talking about. There's a distinction there. You can't just be a bumbling idiot. I can't just be like, oh, whiskey's good, I like Jack Daniels, because anybody who is versed in whiskey is going to be like, what are you talking about? You're an idiot.
That stuff is garbage.
Some people love Jack Daniels, and it actually won, I have it around here somewhere, one of my whiskey magazines, but a certain type of Jack Daniels just won one of the top like 20 whiskeys in the world, but it wasn't their normal.
Yeah.
It wasn't the normal Jack.
They hired somebody and they put them in a room and they said, spend 12 years developing this whiskey. And
well, and also I know because of the website and my background, I was like, I also know they spend a shit ton of money advertising in that magazine. So I'm sure it was a little bit of a, you scratch our backs, we'll scratch yours.
Oh yeah. No, everyone's altruistic about that stuff. It's not, there's no, ulterior motives or money involved.
That specific, it's the Jack Daniels like bonded, and to be fair, like it is in the world of Jack Daniels, it's actually pretty damn good. If you like Jack, you'll love that stuff. If you don't like Jack, you might like it. It's a little different, but I mean, that's how I got into whiskey, right? In college, I was drinking Jack and Coke.
Yeah.
And then eventually I tried something straight and I was like, oh, that tastes like jet fuel. And then I tried a different one. I was like, oh, that's a little better. And, then I was out one night with some friends that had a lot of money and they were like, here, try some of this. And then that was the kind of the day my world changed, really, because I was like, holy shit, that's really good. And then I had like 3 or 4 throughout the night of we started tasting all sorts of different stuff. And I was like, man, there's a whole world here that I don't know anything about. And I was just intrigued enough where I started getting into it. And then, like I said, I started talking about it. And with my friend group, became the whiskey guy and then that grew. It's the same, right? In any business, like you talk about it, your friends get to know you as that guy. Then they tell their friends, and then they tell their friends. Social media amplifies that. So we get on social media, talk about it. Our friends interact, that grows. I mean, that's how you do it really in any business to grow a brand, if you want to call it that.
So
I call it a persona. Like I'm more of a persona, like a whiskey persona guy, but the brand was what the business had.
That makes sense. Yeah. And that's always challenging too, because, talking about something, creating the content and the persona and all that stuff takes a lot of work. Well, recently I've heard basically nothing but about how AI makes it all automated. And it's like apparently you just type the word whiskey and you're producing blogs and content and all this stuff is happening automatically, and it's going to be the best thing ever. And most marketers are presenting it that way and selling their ebooks and all that stuff to support their case. So what's the reality behind AI as it stands today, and like how do you see it playing out in the future?
So I'll start by saying I'm not an expert at this, and the reason I say this, like I've been messing with AI and all of it. First of all, it's not even true AI. What we're dealing with today is getting there fast. It's getting there very quickly. But artificial intelligence, as we think about it, like in the movies that we see where it's thinking for itself and it has feelings, we're not there yet. But again, we are getting there pretty quickly. So what we're dealing with right now is machine learning still. And it's learning very quickly. But what I want to say is I'm not an expert because this shit is changing by the day. Like it's changing so fast. I can't say that I'm an expert at something. Like next week, I'm doing a big presentation, a big webinar, and I'm waiting until like a day or two before to go back and redo some of my presentation that I did 2 weeks ago because stuff has changed. And I found some cool new stuff, and I've seen stuff, and GPT-4 came out, and I mean, it's changing so damn fast that to me, nobody can say, hey, I'm an expert. There are people that are way, way, way smarter than me that have been studying AI that are like the literal like engineers. Like those guys maybe can call themselves experts. But for somebody on the marketing side to call themselves an AI expert and to say that I'm getting a bunch of business and doing all this stuff, like, I call bullshit. And so that's what was happening was I started seeing a lot of content around that. And like you said, people selling their ebooks and I'll sell you the prompts you need to get business and all this stuff. And I was just like, man, it's just a load of shit. It's marketing hype. AI is awesome. It's a crazy, amazing tool if you know how to use it properly. And you can also get yourself in trouble with it, especially on our side of things where we have professional licenses. We have to play by a certain set of rules or we get ourselves sued. So my best example is if I go to the AI and I say, type out a listing description about, whatever property, like it can't go, we'll say it can't. It can now if you have the certain plugins, but it's not designed to go find that property on your website, figure out what it is, look at the pictures. Like we're not there yet. So we have to prompt it. We have to give it the information and then it spits out a different form of that. So that's where it's really cool is I can go put a prompt in and get something out of it. And so what these guys are selling is it'll change your world. Like you said, you put one word in and it gives you a blog post. I can say, hey, write me a 500-word blog post about whiskey, and it will. I can, the more detailed I get on the prompt and the inputs, the more detail it's going to spit out. And so, it's different. That's different in every industry. Going back to the real estate and the mortgage side of things, like up until recently, and even recently, like it's only trained up to a certain point. So like 2 weeks ago, I was screwing around with it and I was like, hey, give me 10 bullet points on reasons why it's a great time to buy a house right now in Portland, Oregon. And, again, more details, better output. But it was telling me how rates were still at all-time lows. And I was like, oh, that's interesting because they aren't, clearly. They're not, they're bounce up and down, as you know, but like it was only trained up until like middle of last year when rates were still super low. And so that there's a gap there. And if you're not careful and paying attention, you can get screwed by that gap. So what people should be using it for is to do a little bit of research and ideation. So like what I use it for at Breakthrough Broker, when I'm tasked with writing something or creating a headline or, an email subject line or whatever, I will go do my own, and then I will put that into the chat GPT and I will say, make this more succinct. I will say the prompt I put in is something along the lines of, you're an award-winning copywriter. You specialize in writing emails that convert clients at a very high rate. You want to create an engaging subject line for this email on these topics. Give me 5 examples. And it'll go boom, 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 boom. And then I'll go, oh, that one's good. That one sucks. And then I'll kind of mix and match. And then maybe I'll run it back through and I'll say, okay, take number 3 and refine it. Make it more clever, make it witty, make it shorter, longer, whatever. Like that process, it's phenomenal for stuff like that. And it can do so many other things that's a whole nother conversation, obviously, too. But I just see so many people out there, like you said, that are just trying to like make a buck off of it, that it drives me nuts. And so I want to protect our community, our friends, and anybody in the industry so that they're not spending money on that stuff. Like, you don't need to spend money. I want to put out free content that raises awareness, makes it to where people aren't scared of it, and that they know how to use it enough that they're comfortable to go mess around with it. Because that's how you truly learn what it's capable of, is you just have to go play with it.
That's what I'm needing to do on my side. I initially played with it, and asked it to write some things for me, and it's like the standard stuff. Write a funny story about this person, and it wrote a story about them or whatever. And I like, oh, that's neat, but I don't really understand how to leverage this. And then yesterday or the day before, I'm talking with my team about it because we're seeing some platforms release AI kind of integrated chat functionality to like take content and record it in a simplified way, or to take what you wrote and expand it into something a bit more elaborate. So one example is my support desk platform that we're members of. We subscribe to it, that handles all our support requests. They have a new AI thing where like you could type a very bland, very basic thing and then say like, hit the AI button and it will like make it more personable.
Yep.
And it saves you time because you just go like this, and then it goes, makes it more conversational, I guess.
Better, yeah. So I see people like, they, especially in the real estate world, like they want to use it to write listing descriptions. And I'm like, the thing is just a computer and it doesn't know, like it's not in the house. It doesn't see what you see. And you write out the listing description, then put it in there and say, make this like, stop, dude, leave me alone. I'm busy here. My dog's freaking out again. So here, I'm going to move my desk down.
No worries.
So what I see and what I want people to understand, I'm sure, is that I can go write, the typical listing description. And if I write, if I'm not a good writer, like I'll go write a listing description, I'll put it in the chat GPT and I'll say, hey, make this listing description sound a little more affluent. Maybe it's a high-end listing. It'll take what you wrote and make it sound better. It'll You can say, make this sound funny, make it wittier, put it in the style of Eminem. Like, you can do all sorts of crazy shit.
Sweet.
But you have to have a base to work with. And that's where people get lost on, is they want it to, like, write a listing description. And I'm like, it can't. You can say, write a listing description for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in the Roseway neighborhood of Portland, Oregon. And it would. It just wouldn't be something that I would put into my listings.
It almost sounds like the people that are going to have success with this are the people who are natural management leaders, where, one of the ways that most managers fail is by not setting expectations about how they want the job done.
Mm-hmm.
And so AI is a bit like that, right? You can't just say, like, go do this thing, and then the output's subpar and you're upset about it. Well, you didn't tell them what you actually wanted.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like a marketing assistant, and it's like, I don't want to say it's like a really smart dumb person, right? So they have unlimited knowledge. You just have to tell them very specifically what you wanted to do, well, what you want them to do.
Yeah. That's it. That's a good point. I never thought of it that way. So I won't get so mad at Chat GDP anymore, or whatever, GPT.
Right.
What is it? GPT?
Yeah.
Okay.
I forget what it even stands for. It's some.
I'm sure the AI created the name themselves as the most catchy possible name based on this framework.
Well, and then I went down the rabbit hole of messing around with the images.
Oh my gosh, those are so funny.
So some of them in the beginning, like I would say, create whatever. The very first time I ever did one was I have a little Frenchie, and I was like, hey, make an image of a French bulldog playing poker, wearing a top hat and a red bow tie. And it did. And it came, but like the details around that were fuzzy at best. So like the cards on the table were all jacked up. Like there wasn't, it wasn't like an ace and a king or anything like that. It was just a bunch of weird symbols.
Yeah.
The chips were all weird. Like everything was just kind of weird, but refined. Like that has been so far refined over the last like 3 months that now if I went back and did that and got a little bit more descriptive, like what it spits out is so photorealistic. It's freaking people out. It's freaking me out. Like some of the stuff that I think we're going to start seeing, and this is where we get into the legalities and the ethics of all of this, is the deep fakes that we can create, not only just images, but now videos and voices and sounds. Like that shit is scary. I can make a video of,
really scary.
I can make a video of anybody saying anything, and it looks so real that it's nuts.
I was listening to another podcast the other day, and they had a bunch of intros. They had like, James Earl Jones do the intro or whatever, and it was like sounded really good. And actually, they even had this is not a big podcast, right? It's like a passion play that they, probably get 1,000 people listen to it or whatever, which is to say it's a lot bigger than our podcast. But the guy who's hosting it, he's not a well-known person, and he had the AI do an intro in his voice. It wasn't him, and he's like, I didn't do that,
right?
And it sounded exactly like it. Even the mannerisms, it was freaky.
Yesterday, like Joe Rogan's podcast is one of the biggest, if not the biggest podcast in the world, I believe.
Yep.
And they started doing an AI version. So it's Joe Rogan, and I mean, this is a full video, like on YouTube, you can watch. It is a video of Joe Rogan interviewing Sam Altman, which is the CEO of OpenAI, which is the AI chat GPT guy. It's Joe Rogan interviewing Sam Altman on his podcast in video on YouTube, episode 1, and it's all AI created.
No way.
Script, the questions, the voice, the video, 100% AI, and it is freaky. The screenshot, if you look, like it's not 100% Joe Rogan. You can kind of tell at some points, but if you just close your eyes, you might not be able to tell. If you watch it, you might not be able to tell. And it's just, like I said, that has only happened in the last like 3 to 6 months that it's come that far that fast. And that's what's freaking me out, because I'm like, man, this is cool. I love this stuff. But oh my God, put it in the wrong hands, that's what, with anything, like you put a rock in the wrong person's hands, they're going to do bad things with it, right?
Yeah. I mean, man, how do you protect, how do you even build protection around that sort of
Well,
stuff?
nuts. If you heard, like last week, all of these big dogs like Elon Musk and Bill Gates and all these guys, they were pleading with the government and some of these companies to put a hold on things for a minute. Like, hey, press pause. And people are giving them shit about it. They're like, oh, this is awesome. Like, everything's going so fast. It's great. They're smart enough to see some of this shit. Like, if we don't throttle this and kind of put some rules around it, and I hate that idea in that sense. Like, I don't like putting rules around something that's done.
Progress.
But it's like some bad things are going to happen.
Wow.
And I don't know what, like, you don't know what that looks like yet. We know, like, nobody knows because this is all so new, but those guys are smart enough to go like, holy shit, this is going to get out of hand really fast if we don't figure some of this stuff out, rules and regulations. And I don't know, that if you read like OpenAI's mantra, they're like, we want to make the world a better place using AI. It's like, yeah.
That's pretty vague.
Yeah.
Better place for who? For the owners of OpenAI who get to scam your identity and get control of your. Man, that's crazy.
Some crazy stuff coming at us really fast.
Man. Yeah, I mean, that's so there's obviously still utility in AI today. But like you said, like we talked about, right, you got to manage it like a really smart, dumb person. What are some of the coolest things you've seen people leverage it for? Let's just maybe be specific on the real estate and mortgage side. Is there anything that's caught your eye?
I would say no, not yet. I mean, there's a bunch of little examples. I've seen some really cool stuff with some of the images. I think like that could potentially put virtual stagers out of business. Like, I was messing with it 3, 4, 5 months ago, and I uploaded a picture of a vacant house, and I just said, hey, I want to see modern, an L-shaped orange modern couch in the corner of this room with a flat panel TV hanging on the wall displaying the Dukes of Hazzard TV show. And it spit that out, and it was funky because, like I said, it was 4 or 5 months ago. I bet you if I went and did that now, it would just be like ultra photorealistic, and you'd be like, that's crazy. So I see some really cool tools, and I wrote down one of them to answer your question, reimaginehome.ai. So the thought of this has been around for a long time, and there were some apps originally back in the day where you could like take a picture of a room and change the paint color, and it worked. But now you can take a picture of that room and you can basically say, remove all the furniture, and it'll remove all the furniture out of the room, and it'll make it to where it's vacant. And then you can tell it what you want to put back into the room, and it'll do that all within minutes. And that's super cool. Then there's ethics around that. Like, people shouldn't be using that in their listing online because it's not a true representation of the house, so that's the stuff we need to figure out, the regulation part. But in the meantime, these people are just building some cool shit like that. Like, it'll be useful down the road. It'll probably have rules around it, but it's no different than somebody photoshopping blue sky and green grass, right? Like, it's,
Yeah.
But we're not supposed to use those. You're not supposed to Photoshop the power lines out of your listing photos because it's not a true representation of the house. You get there, there's a bunch of power lines, and you're like, well, this is weird. So that was one of the cooler things I've seen for specific to real estate. On the mortgage side of things, how mortgage it's always behind, and there's not a lot of like super interesting stuff it's kind of come into play. But chat, like we can use Chat GPT to write code. It'll create plugins for your website. You can do HTML in it. You can do all sorts of stuff on that side of things as well. That's out of my area of expertise in my realm, but I did have a friend the other day that he's in the different industry, but he was like, I needed this WordPress plugin, and my developer was telling me he couldn't figure out how to do it. So he's like, I took our limited knowledge of the JSON code for WordPress, and I put it into ChatGPT and I asked it to build a plugin that did this. And he's like, I screwed around and I've never done this before. And within like an hour, I had a working WordPress plugin on my website.
Wow.
And so, I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff that it can do in that sense too. That's just on a whole spectrum of different than what we use it for.
And the scary part is like tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
This is like the low hanging fruit, simple, dumb application stuff. And so, I mean, 10 years from now, this could be like, man,
right? Like, dude, I would, if I were you, like, I mean, and we can all do this. You can go into ChatGPT and say, I'm a mortgage broker, I'm a realtor, I'm a whatever. What should I be using ChatGPT and AI for? And give me 10 things that you think I should use you for. And it will. And you'll be surprised by the list it gives you, because you'll probably be like, oh shit, that's cool.
That is, yeah, I'm definitely gonna do that. We'll put that in the show notes.
There you go.
Yeah. Let's spread the wildfire, and then we can band together as the rise of the machine happens, and
I always laugh because I do the same thing with Alexa and Siri. I don't want to say it too loud, she'll hear me, but I always say please and thank you for some reason. Like I don't know why, but I do now, because I'm like, when these things all come together and decide that they don't need humans anymore, like I want to be the last on the pecking order. I don't want to be they're like,
he was always so polite.
Yeah, Jeff's got to go first. I'm going to be like, oh, Jeff's always so nice to us.
Do you think they have feelings? I mean, that's the thing. Is that going to matter? Or is it like he always wasted his time with extra words?
Oh, that's the key thing with all of this AI stuff, and the reason why it's not true AI is it doesn't have feelings yet. It doesn't have humility and empathy and all of that. But they are saying that they're seeing like traces of it as it's learning, and it's learning faster, and it's figuring this stuff out. Like it's going to eventually. I just posted a funny video on Facebook a couple days ago. It's this robot that they build with AI built in, and it reacts and responds. It has eyes, so it has cameras for eyes, and it can read our facial expressions and respond appropriately based on if it thinks we're happy or sad. It's at a very basic level of that. What the person did, the researcher went up to the robot and booped its nose, boop. And the AI got mad. Like you could visibly see it. It as the person tried to I'm trying to do it on the camera. Person tries to boop its nose. It's like, it literally was like, whoa, what are you doing? And then kind of goes back in, and then the person goes, boop, and it gets mad. It's like, what the hell? And it grabs the person's arm. Yeah. And I was like, that's it. That's the fucking end of humanity right there. It's all downhill. And it all starts.
We just witnessed it.
With a nose.
Yeah. I'm going back to my analog locks on all my doors and all my, yeah, that's insane, man.
I could talk about this shit for days, so I know we were on a time schedule, but
yeah. Well, I mean, that's kind of like, that's really one of the big things I wanted to just basically start. It's like an icebreaker thing is, there's utility to it. It can be used, but like we stay kind of in the loop because it's some scary stuff for sure.
Yeah, it's it is going to change the world. I think in the next few years we're going to start see it being built in to everything. I mean, Bing and Google, they're building it into their search, that when that happens and it has access to real-time information based on the search engines, and it can scan all of that, we lose that gap, that information gap that it has had for a while. So that's coming. There are now plugins that you can develop and that are already developed that allow that to happen. I've got it on my phone now, stuff like that. So I'm not using it for research in the sense of what some people think, like they should be asking it like, hey, what's the best pizza joint near me? Well, it can tell you that, but it's going act based on the training that it's had from 2021 or 2022, whatever it is now, because it changes daily. It's just going back based on what it has seen. So it might be a Yelp review, it might be a Google review, it might be whatever. and it's taking that information and regurgitating it to us. So it could be outdated. It could be bad information, whatever. We need to always have checks and balances in place. When it gets to the point of real-time information and then it starts getting better and better and better at that, that's when shit's going to be like, I'm super excited for that because I use technology all day, every day. But that's also super scary because the inaccuracies can happen, but we just don't know. That's also another scary part is we don't know because it's so new and it's training itself at this point now. And that I just actually downloaded a paper last night. It's 155 pages, so I haven't gotten through all of it yet, but it's one of the smartest guys that I know. It's a doctor. He's a young guy, but he's like probably one of the smartest AI type of consultants out there. He consults for governments all over the world and on AI for years. And so he just put out a 155-page report on his findings from EP14 and what he sees. And one of the things that caught my eye was, it's a language model and it's text-based. Outside of the images and all the other stuff, the GPT-4 is text-based language model. Well, it has taught itself to draw. And if you think about that, like that's fucking crazy. How you go from words alone, text, to recognizing what something is and then being able to like make stick figures of it and being able to draw, like it's teaching itself that. How long is it going to take to where it then gets to the picture part, like the Mid-Journey and all of the stuff that we're using outside of it to make these images? Like it's going to envelope all of this stuff into itself on its own. And that is mind-blowing and also super scary.
Yeah, because it's like
it's happening in real time.
Yeah. Well, because what's next? I mean, drawing. Yeah, you said we were doing impersonating, right? You can watch the Joe Rogan podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So
it decides it wants to create a video of Joe Biden giving out the nuke codes to China,
and then actually figured out the nuke codes to China.
Yeah,
we
don't know. Like that's the thing is we don't know. That unknown is what these big smart guys are like. Maybe we should try to figure this out.
Yeah.
Well, we're installing this on all of our computers. We're giving it access to everything. If it decides to go rogue, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but we're not stopping it. It's going to be the Terminator.
Oh my God. Well, interesting stuff, man, Jeff. I appreciate your time today.
Yeah.
And if you guys want to learn more about what Jeff's up to, where should they tune in?
Probably just Facebook. That's where I talk about most of this stuff. I'm at the real Jeff B on Facebook and Instagram. Or just search my name. My name's hard to spell. Bernheisel. B.
And if anybody wants to learn more about or get connected to Breakthrough Broker, I'm guessing they can just hit the website or
breakthroughbroker.com.
Cool. Nice. Yeah.
Create a free account and mess around and go from there.
Any AI in there yet?
No, we've been talking about it, and I'm at the point where I've actually seen one of our competitors and a friend of mine build it into his platform specifically for listings, for real estate listings, and I'm like, what's cool? He wanted to be the first to say I have a template designer that you can use AI to create listing descriptions, and I'm like, yeah, except for the very first one that it spit out was a fair housing violation. So we all need to learn, and I talked to the owners and I was like, hey, we could do this. We could build it into the editor. People could put their information in there. But if we do that, and this is another unknown, who's liable for the information that ChatGPT spits out or that our platform spits out? We're using ChatGPT API. I'm using all sorts of letters right there. If I'm using their API to pull that in and do it on my platform and it spits out wrong information and then a realtor gets sued for fair housing discrimination laws, who are they going to come after? Me? Who's ultimately liable? Well, the realtor for sure. But then they could turn around and be like, well, I used your system to do this. There should have been protections in place. I know that I can go train the system. I can dump all of the fair housing information into it and say, I need you to learn this and keep this in mind in the output that you give us in this case. You can train it like that, but there's a lot of liabilities and that
Yeah.
There's a lot of liabilities around that we need to figure out. And so the people that I see rushing to do this because it's cool, I'm like, hey, you can be cool. I just want to be the guy at the end, maybe, that has it all figured out, that doesn't get his ass sued or doesn't get his company sued.
Yeah, right. First, sometimes it's the best to be first to market, but other times it's, with this kind of charted territory, it's really scary. So
people think like, I don't want to keep going on this, but people think like, oh, Google's getting their asses kicked by Bing, by Microsoft, because Microsoft put the chat GPT system, like, well, they invested in it, they own part of it, and they built it into Bing, and they rolled it out way before Google. And I'm like, Google has them beat by light years. They're just kind of hanging back because of what I just said. Like, first to market isn't always best. And so they're doing it right. I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of what Google's doing, but I know they're smart enough, and I know from what I've seen and heard that their platform would knock the socks off of the stuff we're seeing publicly right now, but they are also worried about the ethics and the implications of rolling that out to the general public.
Yeah.
They should.
Yep. Makes sense. Well, we'll have to come back in 6 months and do another one, and we could go, maybe we're in a bunker, hiding, or it's like, you can't do it online. We have to do it in person, like record it on a VHS or something, and
go kill our lunches.
Yeah. Man, well, it's been good to catch up with you, and let's do it again. All right, Jeff. Thanks.
Thank you.
Take care.